The forest erupted into chaos. Mira gasped for air as she sprinted down the narrow dirt path branches, clawing at her skin and tearing at her jacket. Behind her, an alien drone shot past its sleek black surface, glinting under the pale moonlight. A plasma beam carved a smoking trench in the ground, inches from her feet, forcing her to dive behind a boulder. What the hell is going on? She whispered to herself, her chest heaving. A mechanical voice echoed through the forest. Target located. Capture imminent. Mira peeked over the boulder. 3 drones hovered silently, their lenses glowing red as they scanned the area. She had no weapons, no plan, and no idea why she was being hunted. Her quiet evening hike to clear her mind after a long week at school had turned into something out of a nightmare. With trembling hands, she picked up a sharp rock. "You're not going down without a fight." She flung the rock at the nearest drone. It clanged harmlessly against the metal hull, but the distraction bought her enough time to sprint deeper into the woods. The drones whirred and fired, but she zigzagged through the trees, narrowly avoiding the deadly plasma bolts. Suddenly, the forest lit up with an otherworldly blue glow. Mira skidded to a stop as a massive silver ship descended from the sky, its surface covered in glowing runes. The hum of its engines vibrated through her chest. A figure leapt from the craft, landing gracefully on the forest floor in front of her. It was tall and humanoid, clad in silver armor that seemed to ripple like liquid. Its eyes glowed violet, and alien symbols flickered across its exposed skin. Mira stumbled backward. What are you?" Before the figure could answer, the drones fired. The alien moved faster than Mira's eyes could follow, dodging the blasts and hurling an energy disk that sliced through the drones like butter. Explosions erupted and flaming debris rained down around them. The alien turned to her, its voice calm but firm. "Do not fear. You are under my protection." "What protection? From what?" Mira demanded, her voice shaking. Before she could get an answer, the alien raised a device on its wrist. A beam of light enveloped her, pulling her off the ground. She screamed as the world dissolved into a blinding white light. Mira blinked, her vision slowly adjusting to the dim blue glow of her new surroundings. She was encased in a translucent pod floating weightlessly in a strange liquid-like substance. The pod vibrated softly, like it was humming to itself. "What? Where am I?" she murmured. Her voice echoed faintly inside the pod as she realized she could breathe despite the liquid. Outside, she saw an expansive chamber filled with alien technology. Holograms projected star maps and unreadable symbols that danced across the walls. Strange hovering orbs zipped around, tending to consoles. "Let me out of here," she screamed, pounding on the pod's surface. A voice resonated in her mind, deep and soothing. "You are safe, Mira." She froze. The voice didn't come from her ears, it was in her head. The figure from the forest appeared now without its helmet. Its face was striking, almost human, but marked with glowing runes that seemed to pulse with life. "Who are you?" Mira demanded. "And what the hell is going on?" The alien's glowing eyes softened. "I am Kale of the Arcanus. My people are protectors, guardians of endangered life across the galaxy. You are here because you are in grave danger." "From who?" Kel's expression darkened. "From the Herax Syndicate and the Dralin Collective. They know what you are." Mira's heart raced. "What I am? I'm just a regular girl." Kale shook his head. "You are far from ordinary. You possess a genetic anomaly, traces of a long-extinct species known as the Solari. Their energy manipulation abilities made them the most powerful beings in the galaxy. You are the first of your kind in millennia." Mira's mind spun. "That's insane. You've got the wrong person." Kale opened his mouth to respond, but alarm suddenly blared throughout the chamber. The glowing symbols on the walls turned red, and a deep mechanical voice announced, "Warning, Herrax Syndicate vessel detected. Boarding imminent. Kel's calm demeanor vanished, replaced by urgency. Stay here. Do not leave this pod. The ship shuddered violently, throwing Mira against the side of the pod. Through the chamber's viewport, she saw a massive Herrax ship bristling with weapons, locking onto them with harpoons. Soldiers in dark armor were already swarming through the breach. Kale turned to leave, but Mira shouted, "Wait. You can't just leave me here." He glanced back, his expression unreadable. "Trust me. I will protect you." As Kale sprinted toward the battle, Myra stared after him, her chest tight with fear. The walls trembled as explosions rang out, and her pod began to hum louder. She had no idea what awaited her, or why she mattered so much, but one thing was clear: her life would never be the same. The ship shuddered violently as Mira clung to the edges of the translucent pod, her knuckles white. Red warning lights flashed throughout the chamber, and the voice of the ship's AI echoed cold and mechanical. Hostile forces detected. Structural breach imminent. Through the viewport, Mira saw streaks of plasma fire illuminating the vastness of space. The Herrax Syndicate's ship, a menacing black monolith with jagged edges and glowing red ports, loomed larger with every passing second. Smaller attack drones zipped around Kel's vessel, bombarding it with unrelenting firepower. Myra bit her lip. She couldn't just sit there waiting for the inevitable. She remembered Kel's words, "Stay in the pod." But every instinct told her to move. Her heart pounding, she slammed her fists against the controls of the pod. To her surprise, the liquid-like surface dissolved, freeing her. As she stumbled out, a deep rumble shook the ship, followed by the sound of tearing metal. The Herrax had breached the hull. Mira sprinted toward the source of the noise, ignoring the ship's automated warnings. When she reached the cargo bay, chaos greeted her. The air shimmered with energy blasts as Kale fought a group of Herrax soldiers. They were monstrous beings, towering with reptilian features, scaly black armor, and glowing red eyes. Kel's liquid metal weapon morphed seamlessly between a blade and a shield as he darted between them, each move precise and devastating. Mira ducked behind a crate as a plasma bolt scorched the air above her. She grabbed a nearby metal rod, her hands trembling. "What am I doing?" she thought. She wasn't a fighter. But as another Herrax soldier charged Kale from behind, instincts kicked in. "Behind you!" she screamed. Kale spun, but before he could strike, Mira swung the rod with all her strength, hitting the soldier's knee. It stumbled forward just long enough for Kel's blade to pierce its chest. "Stay back," Kale barked. "You'll get yourself killed." Myra shook her head. "If they're coming for me, I'm not hiding." Kale didn't have time to argue. More Herrax soldiers poured in, their guttural battle cries echoing in the chamber. Mira held her ground, but as the fight raged on, she felt something strange stirring within her. Her chest grew warm, and her hands tingled. One of the Herrax lunged at her, claws bared. Panicking, she threw her hands up to shield herself. Golden light erupted from her palms, blasting the soldier across the room. The air around her crackled with energy. Kale froze mid-swing, staring at her in shock. You've awakened." Mira looked down at her glowing hands, her breath shaky. "What just happened?" "No time to explain," Kale said, slicing through another soldier. "But you're more powerful than I realized." Together, they fought off the remaining Herrax soldiers, Mira's newfound powers turning the tide of the battle. When the last soldier fell, Kale turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You're not just a genetic anomaly," he said. "You're a weapon." The ship limped through hyperspace, its once pristine interior marred by scorch marks and debris. Mira sat on a crate in the dimly lit cargo bay, staring at her hands. The golden glow had faded, but she could still feel the residual hum of energy beneath her skin. Kale leaned against the wall, his violet eyes fixed on her. The Solari were the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They could harness energy from stars, channel it into weapons, shields, even entire fleets. But their power made them targets. They were hunted to extinction by those who feared them or wanted to control them. Myra shook her head. I'm not some ancient alien warrior. I'm just a human. A grad student. I didn't ask for any of this. Kel's expression softened, but his voice remained firm. You may not have asked for it, but it's who you are. The Herax and the Dralin know it. They won't stop until they have you or destroy you. Mira stood pacing the small space. Why? What could they possibly want with me? Power, Kale said simply. Your Solari abilities could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. If they can control you, they control everything. Myra's mind raced. She didn't want to believe him, but the memory of the golden light and the way it had effortlessly obliterated a Herax soldier was undeniable. Before she could respond, the ship's AI interrupted. Warning. Dralin collective forces detected. Exit from hyperspace imminent. Kel's jaw tightened. Of course they found us. Mira gripped the edge of the crate. Who are they? Kale glanced at her. The Dralin are telepathic conquerors. They'll try to manipulate your mind. Stay focused. Trust yourself. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Myra's breath caught in her throat. The Dralin fleet was massive, hundreds of ships arranged in perfect formation, their sleek silver surfaces glinting against the void. Kale hurried to the cockpit, Mira close behind. We can't fight them all, he said. But we can run. The ship darted through the fleet, narrowly avoiding fire. Mira's pulse raced as Kale maneuvered through the chaos, his hands moving deftly over the controls. But the Dralin were relentless. A boarding vessel latched onto their ship, and moments later, the hull groaned under the weight of the invaders. Kale turned to Myra, his face grim. They're here. If we don't stop them, they'll take you. Myra swallowed hard. She didn't feel ready, but she nodded. Let's do this. The cargo bay doors burst open, and the Dralin soldiers stepped through. They were humanoid but unervingly alien, their skin a shimmering silver, their eyes glowing blue, and an aura of cold, oppressive energy radiating from them. As Kale charged, Mira closed her eyes, reaching for the power she'd felt before. It responded, flooding her with warmth. When she opened her eyes, golden energy crackled around her, illuminating the bay. The Dralin hesitated, clearly not expecting her to fight back. She raised her hands, unleashing a wave of energy that sent them sprawling. For the first time, Myra felt a flicker of confidence. She wasn't just a target. She was a force to be reckoned with. Not bad, Kale said, cutting down another soldier. Thanks, Myra replied, her voice steady. Let's finish this. The ship shook violently as Myra and Kale battled their way through the Dralin invaders. The air shimmered with energy blasts, and the walls of the cargo bay groaned under the strain of the conflict. Myra's golden energy swirled around her like a storm crackling with power, as she repelled one Dralin soldier after another. Kale shouted over the chaos. They're sending reinforcements. We can't hold them off forever. Myra turned to him, her eyes glowing with determination. Then we don't wait. Let's end this now. Kale hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Follow me. He led her to the cockpit where the ship's AI was running calculations at an alarming speed. Through the viewport, the vast Dralin fleet loomed, blocking every possible escape route. At their center was a massive command ship, its sleek surface pulsing with energy. Surrounding it were the smaller vessels of the Herax Syndicate, who had joined the battle in their bid to claim Mira. We can't outrun them, Kale said grimly. But there's another way. Myra followed his gaze to the dying star in the distance. It burned a fiery red, its surface writhing with unstable energy as it prepared to collapse into a supernova. The star's gravity field was already pulling debris and smaller ships toward it. "You want to use the star?" Mira asked, her voice steady but incredulous. Kale nodded. "The Drowan won't risk losing their fleet to a collapsing star. If we can harness your power to destabilize it further, we can force them to retreat or destroy them." Myra swallowed hard, her chest tightening. The thought of channeling the energy of the star was overwhelming, but she knew there was no other choice. "What do I need to do?" Kale placed his hands on her shoulders. "Trust yourself. The Solari could draw energy from stars, shape it, control it. It's in your DNA. I'll guide the ship close enough for you to connect with it. The rest is up to you." Before she could respond, the Drowlan and Herax ships opened fire again. The cockpit rattled as Kale took the controls, piloting the ship into a daring dive toward the star. Plasma bolts whizzed past them, and Myra could feel the oppressive heat of the star even from this distance. The cockpit viewport darkened as they approached the star's edge, shielding them from its blinding light. Myra closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth she felt deep inside. The golden energy in her chest flared, spreading through her veins like liquid fire. Kel's voice was calm but firm. "Now, Myra, reach out to it." She extended her hands toward the viewport, and the energy inside her surged. She felt a connection, a pulsing rhythm that matched her heartbeat. The star's energy was chaotic, wild, and overwhelming, but she pulled it toward her, shaping it into something controlled. The ship's sensors went haywire as the star's surface erupted with massive flares of golden light. The Drowan fleet hesitated, their ships faltering as they tried to calculate the risk. But Myra wasn't done. With a cry that echoed through the ship, she unleashed the energy she had gathered. A blinding wave of light erupted from the star, expanding outward in a shockwave that consumed everything in its path. The smaller Herax and Drowan ships disintegrated instantly, while the larger vessels scrambled to retreat. Kale shouted over the alarms, "Hold on! I'm taking us out of here!" The ship lurched violently as it sped away from the imploding star. Myra collapsed to the floor, her body trembling from the effort. Through the viewport, she saw the star collapse in on itself, becoming a brilliant supernova that consumed what remained of the enemy fleets. Kale reached down, helping her to her feet. His violet eyes were filled with something she hadn't seen before: pride. "You did it." Mira managed a weak smile. "We did it."